Cape Breton Island is an island on the Atlantic coast of North America. The name probably derives from Cap Breton near Bayonne, or to the name Breton, the Anglicized version of the French historical region, Bretagne. Cape Breton Island is part of the province of Nova Scotia, Canada. The 10,311 square kilometers island accounts for 18.7% of the total area of Nova Scotia. Although physically separated from the Nova Scotia peninsula by the Strait of Cancer, it is artificially connected to mainland Nova Scotia by the 1,385 meters long rock-filled Cancer Causeway. The island is located east-northeast of the mainland, with its northern and western coasts fronting on the Gulf of St. Lawrence, its western coast also forming the eastern limits of the Northumberland Strait. The eastern and southern coasts front the Atlantic Ocean, its eastern coast also forming the western limits of the Cabot Strait. Its landmass slopes upward from south to north, culminating in the highlands of its northern cape. One of the world's largest saltwater lakes, Bras d'Or, dominates the center of the island. The island is divided into 4 of Nova Scotia's 18 counties: Cape Breton, Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria. Their total population at the 2011 census numbered 135,974 Cape Bretonners. This is approximately 15% of the provincial population. Cape Breton Island has experienced a decline in population of approximately 4.4% since the previous census in 2006. Approximately 75% of the island's population is located in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, which includes all of Cape Breton County and is often referred to as Industrial Cape Breton. Given the history of coal mining and steel manufacturing in this area, which was Nova Scotia's industrial heartland throughout the 20th century, the island contains 5 reserves of the Míkmaq Nation, these being Eskasona, Membertou, Wagmatcook, Wacoba, and Potlotek. Chapel Island. Eskasona is the largest in both population and land area. History. Cape Breton Island's first residents were most likely archaic maritime natives, ancestors of the Míkmaq. The people who were inhabiting the island at the time of European arrival. John Cabot reportedly visited the island in 1497. However, historians are unclear as to whether Cabot first visited Newfoundland or Cape Breton Island. This discovery is commemorated by Cape Breton's Cabot Trail, and by the Cabot's Landing Historic Site and Provincial Park, located near the village of Dingwall. In about 1521–22, the Portuguese under João Alvarez Fagundes established a fishing colony on the island. As many as 200 settlers lived in a village, the name of which is not known, located according to some historians at what is now present-day Ingonish on the island's northeastern peninsula. The fate of this Portuguese colony is unknown, but it is mentioned as late as 1570. During the Anglo-French War of 1627–1629, under Charles I, by 1629 the Kirkes took Quebec City. Sir James Stewart of Killeith, Lord Ochiltree planted a colony on Cape Breton Island at Breatagne, Nova Scotia, and Alexander's son, William Alexander, 1st Earl of Stirling, established the first incarnation of New Scotland at Port Royal. This set of Scottish triumphs, which left Cape Sable as the only major French holding in North America, was not destined to last. Charles I's haste to make peace with France on the terms most beneficial to him meant that the new North American gains would be bargained away in the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. The French quickly defeated the Scottish at Breatagne, and established the first permanent settlements on Île Royale, present-day English Town and St. Peter's. These settlements lasted almost continuously until Nicholas Denys left in 1659. Île Royale then remained vacant for more than 50 years, until the communities along with Lewisburg were established in 1713. Île Royale, known as Île Royale to the French. The island also saw active settlement by France. after the French ceded their colonies on Newfoundland and the Acadian mainland to the British by the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713. The French relocated the population of Plaisance, Newfoundland, to Île Royale, and the French garrison was established in the central eastern part at St. Anne. As the harbour at St. Anne experienced icing problems, it was decided to construct a much larger fortification at Lewisburg to improve defences at the entrance to the Gulf of St. Lawrence and to defend France's fishing fleet on the Grand Banks. The French also built the Lewisburg Lighthouse in 1734, the first lighthouse in Canada and one of the first in North America. In addition to Cape Breton Island, the French colony of Île Royale also included Isle St. John, today called Prince Edward Island. Lewisburg itself was one of the most important commercial and military centres in New France. Lewisburg was captured by New Englanders with British naval assistance in 1745 and by British forces in 1758. The French population of Île Royale was deported to France after each siege, while French settlers returned to their homes in Île Royale after the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed in 1748. The fortress was demolished after the second siege. Île Royale remained formally part of New France until it was ceded to Great Britain by the Treaty of Paris in 1763. It was then merged with the adjacent British colony of Nova Scotia. Acadians that had been expelled from Nova Scotia and Île Royale were permitted to settle in Cape Breton beginning in 1764, and established communities in northwestern Cape Breton, near Cheticamp, and southern Cape Breton, on and near Isle Madame. Some of the first British-sanctioned settlers on the island following the 7 Years' War were Irish, although upon settlement they merged with local French communities to form a culture rich in music and tradition. From 1763 to 1784, the island was administratively part of the colony of Nova Scotia and was governed from Halifax. The first permanently settled Scottish community on Cape Breton Island was Judique, settled in 1775 by Michael Moore MacDonald. He spent his first winter using his upside-down boat for shelter, which is reflected in the architecture of the village's community centre. He composed a song about the area called Aux Allen or Fair is the Place, colony of Cape Breton in 1784. Britain split the colony of Nova Scotia into 3 separate colonies: New Brunswick, Cape Breton Island, and present-day Peninsula Nova Scotia, in addition to the adjacent colonies of St. John's Island and Newfoundland. The colony of Cape Breton Island had its capital at Sydney on its namesake harbour fronting on Spanish Bay and the Cabot Strait. Its first lieutenant governor was Joseph Frederick Wallet Desbrest and his successor was William Míkmaq. A number of United Empire Loyalists emigrated to the Canadian colonies, including Cape Breton. David Matthews, the former mayor of New York City during the American Revolution, emigrated with his family to Cape Breton in 1783. He succeeded Míkmaq as head of the colony and served from 1795 to 1798. From 1799 to 1807, the military commandant was John Despard, brother of Edward. An order forbidding the granting of land in Cape Breton, issued in 1763, was removed in 1784. The mineral rights to the island were given over to the Duke of York by an order in council. The British government had intended that the Crown take over the operation of the mines when Cape Breton was made a colony, but this was never done, probably because of the rehabilitation cost of the mines. The mines were in a neglected state, caused by careless operations dating back at least to the time of the final fall of Lewisburg. Large-scale shipbuilding began in the 1790s, beginning with schooners for local trade moving in the 1820s to larger brigs and brigantines, mostly built for British ship owners. Shipbuilding peaked in the 1850s, marked in 1851 by the full-rigged ship Lord Clarendon, the largest wooden ship ever built in Cape Breton. Merger with Nova Scotia in 1820, the colony of Cape Breton Island was merged for the second time with Nova Scotia. This development is one of the factors which led to large-scale industrial development in the Sydney coalfield of eastern Cape Breton County. By the late 19th century, as a result of the faster shipping, expanding fishery and industrialization of the island, exchanges of people between the island of Newfoundland and Cape Breton increased, beginning a cultural exchange that continues to this day. During the first half of the 19th century, Cape Breton Island experienced an influx of Highland Scots numbering approximately 50,000 as a result of the Highland clearances. Today, the descendants of the Highland Scots dominate Cape Breton Island's culture, particularly in rural communities. To this day, Gaelic is still the first language of a number of elderly Cape Bretoners. The growing influence of English-dominated media from outside the Scottish communities saw the use of this language erode quickly during the 20th century. Many of the Scots who immigrated there were either Roman Catholics or Presbyterians, which can be seen in a number of island landmarks and place names. The 1920s were some of the most violent times in Cape Breton. They were marked by several severe labour disputes, the famous murder of William Davis by strike breakers, and the seizing of the new Waterford power plant by striking miners led to a major union sentiment that persists to this day in some circles. William Davis Miners' Memorial Day is celebrated in coal mining towns to commemorate the deaths of miners at the hands of the coal companies. 20th century. The turn of the 20th century saw Cape Breton Island at the forefront of scientific achievement with the now famous activities launched by inventors Alexander Graham Bell and Guglielmo Marconi. Following his successful invention of the telephone and being relatively wealthy, Bell acquired land near Baddeck in 1885, largely due to surroundings reminiscent of his early years in Scotland. He established a summer estate complete with research laboratories, working with deaf people, including Helen Keller, and continued to invent. Baddeck would be the site of his experiments with hydrofoil technologies as well as the Aerial Experiment Association, financed by his wife, which saw the first powered flight in the British Empire when the AEA Silver Dart took off from the ice-covered waters of Brasdor Lake. Bell also built the forerunner to the Iron Lung and experimented with breeding sheep. Marconi's contributions to Cape Breton Island were also quite significant, as he used the island's geography to his advantage in transmitting the first North American transatlantic radio message from a station constructed at Table Head in Glace Bay to a receiving station at Poldhu in Cornwall, England. Marconi's pioneering work in Cape Breton marks the beginning of modern radio technology. Marconi's station at Marconi Towers, on the outskirts of Glace Bay, became the chief communications center for the Royal Canadian Navy in World War I through to the early years of World War II. Promotions for tourism beginning in the 1950s recognized the importance of the Scottish culture to the province, and the provincial government started encouraging the use of Gaelic once again. The establishment of funding for the Gaelic College of Celtic Arts and Crafts and formal Gaelic language courses in public schools are intended to address the near loss of this culture to English assimilation. In the 1960s, the fortress of Lewisburg was partially reconstructed by Parks Canada. Since 2009, this National Historic Site of Canada has attracted an average of 90,000 visitors per year. Geography. The island measures 10,311 square kilometers in area, making it the 77th largest island in the world and Canada's 18th largest island. Cape Breton Island is composed mainly of rocky shores, rolling farmland, glacial valleys, barren headlands, mountains, woods and plateaus. Geological evidence suggests that at least part of the island was originally joined with present-day Scotland and Norway, now separated by millions of years of continental drift. The northern portion of Cape Breton Island is dominated by the Cape Breton Highlands, commonly shortened to simply the Highlands, which are an extension of the Appalachian mountain chain. The Highlands comprise the northern portions of Inverness and Victoria counties. In 1936, the federal government established the Cape Breton Highlands National Park, covering 949 square kilometers across the northern third of the Highlands. The Cabot Trail scenic highway also encircles the coastal perimeter of the plateau. Cape Breton Island's hydrological features include the Bras d'Or Lake system, a saltwater fjord at the heart of the island, and freshwater features including Lake Ainslie, the Margaree River system, and the Myra River. Innumerable smaller rivers and streams drain into the Bras d'Or Lake estuary and onto the Gulf of St. Lawrence and Atlantic coasts. Cape Breton Island is joined to the mainland by the Cancer Causeway, which was completed in 1955, enabling direct road and rail traffic to and from the island, but requiring marine traffic to pass through the Cancer Canal at the eastern end of the causeway. Cape Breton Island is divided into 4 counties: Cape Breton, Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria. Demographics. The island's residents can be grouped into 5 main cultures: Scottish, Mi'kmaq, Acadian, Irish, and English, with respective languages Gaelic, Mi'kmaq, French, and English. English is now the primary spoken language, though Mi'kmaq, Gaelic and French are still heard. Later migrations of black loyalists, Italians, and Eastern Europeans mostly settled in the eastern part of the island around the industrial Cape Breton region. The population of Cape Breton Island has been in decline for almost 2 decades, with an increasing population exodus in recent years due to economic conditions. According to the Census of Canada, the population of Cape Breton Island in 2011 was 135,974, a 4.4% decline from 142,298 in 2006, and a 14.1% decline from 158,260 in 1996. Religious groups Statistics Canada in 2001 reported a religion total of 145,525 for Cape Breton, including 5,245 with no religious affiliation. Major categories included Roman Catholic, 96,260, Protestant, 42,390, Christian, not included elsewhere, 580, Orthodox, 395, Jewish, 250, Muslim, 145. A synagogue in Sydney serves a small historic Jewish community which was once one of the largest ones in eastern Canada, with 4 shells: one in Glace Bay, one in New Waterford, one in Whitney Pier, and the one in Sydney. While more recent Muslim immigrants hold Friday prayers at Cape Breton University and the former Holy Redeemer Hall in Whitney Pier, Buddhists are a small minority, although Gampo Abbey in Pleasant Bay has been operational since 1984.